I asked G what a man had to do to assimilate this teaching. What to do? Asked G as though surprised. It is impossible to do anything. A man must first of all understand certain things. He has thousands of false ideas and false conceptions, chiefly about himself, and he must get rid of some of them before beginning to acquire anything new. Otherwise the new will be built on a wrong foundation, and the result will be worse than before. How can one get rid of false ideas? I asked. We depend on the forms of our perception. False ideas are produced by the forms of our perception. G shook his head. Again you speak of something different, he said. You speak of errors arising from perceptions, but I am not speaking of these. Within the limits of given perceptions, man can err, more or err less. As I have said before, man's chief delusion is his conviction that he can do. All people think that they can do. All people want to do, and the first question all people ask is what they are to do. But actually nobody does anything, and nobody can do anything. This is the first thing that must be understood. Everything happens. All that befalls a man, all that is done by him, all that comes from him, all this happens. And it happens in exactly the same way as rain falls as a result of a change in the temperature in the higher regions of the atmosphere, or the surrounding clouds, as snow melts under the rays of the sun, as dust rises with the wind. Man is a machine. All his deeds, actions, words, thoughts, feelings, convictions, opinions, and habits are the results of external influences, external impressions. Out of himself, a man cannot produce a single thought, a single action. Everything he says, does, thinks, feels, all this happens. Man cannot discover anything, invent anything. It all happens. To establish this fact for oneself, to understand it, to be convinced of its truth, means getting rid of 1,000 illusions about man, about his being creative and consciously organizing his own life, and so on. There is nothing of this kind. Everything happens. Popular movements, wars, revolutions, changes of government, all this happens. And it happens in exactly the same way as everything happens in the life of individual man. Man is born, lives, dies, builds houses, writes books, not as he wants to, but as it happens. Everything happens. Man does not love, hate, desire. All this happens. But no one will ever believe you if you tell him he can do nothing. This is the most offensive and the most unpleasant thing you can tell people. It is particularly unpleasant and offensive because it is the truth, and nobody wants to know the truth. When you understand this, it will be easier for us to talk. But it is one thing to understand with the mind, and another thing to feel it with one's whole mass, to be really convinced that it is so and never forget it. With this question of doing, G emphasized the word, yet another thing is connected. It always seems to people that others invariably do things wrongly, not in the way they should be done. Everybody always thinks he could do it better. They do not understand, and do not want to understand, that what is being done, and particularly what has already been done in one way, cannot be and could not have been done in another way. Have you noticed how everyone now is talking about the war? Everyone has his own plan, his own theory. Everyone finds that nothing is being done in the way it ought to be done. Actually, everything is being done in the only way it can be done. If one thing could be different, everything could be different, and then perhaps there would have been no war. Try to understand what I am saying. Everything is dependent on everything else. Everything is connected. Nothing is separate. Therefore, everything is going in the only way it can go. If people were different, everything would be different. They are what they are. So everything is as it is. This was very difficult to swallow. Is there nothing, absolutely nothing, that can be done? I asked. Absolutely nothing. And can nobody do anything? That is another question. In order to do, it is necessary to be, and it is necessary first to understand what to be means. If we continue our talks, you will see that we use a special language, and that in order to talk with us, it is necessary to learn this language. It is not worthwhile talking in ordinary language, because in that language it is impossible to understand one another. This also at the moment seems strange to you, but it is true. In order to understand, it is necessary to learn another language. In the language which people speak, they cannot understand one another. You will see later on why this is so. Then one must learn to speak the truth. This also appears strange to you. You do not realize that one has to learn to speak the truth. It seems to you that it is enough to wish or to decide to do so. And I tell you that people comparatively rarely tell a deliberate lie. In most cases, they think they speak the truth, and yet they lie all the time, both when they wish to lie and when they wish to speak the truth. They lie all the time, both to themselves and to others. Therefore, nobody ever understands either himself or anyone else. Think, could there be such discord, such deep misunderstanding, and such hatred towards the views and opinions of others, if people were able to understand one another? But they cannot understand because they cannot help lying. To speak the truth is the most difficult thing in the world, and one must study a great deal and for a long time in order to be able to speak the truth. The wish alone is not enough. To speak the truth, one must know what the truth is and what a lie is, and first of all in oneself. And this nobody wants to know. Talks with G and the unexpected turn he gave to every idea interested me more